So what happens? Solid goes along the boundary. You go out of the box. So it is not really matter. In the same network, and you try to log the same user, different actually different purchase was. Yeah. So now, if you which login for trying to log, test user, this one.
No, there are people in online.
Online.
This will be like or for a market. When I was addressing a lot of people, how many people are there?
So now we are able to log in. I log out. Then we can try. How to use it. So, yeah, I reset all the pages.
It's not a queue. All this means.
Okay. They're not.
It's okay. We will start it in 1 minute. This is. Hello? Yes, you're there. It's getting started. So, popping. And you also call this. Format episodes. Mahesh garu. Vijay garu. He's on there. Okay. You guys jump in.
Yeah, I'm sharing this. Yeah.
Charak. No required myself. Part of my that is it. So doubt card. So you're not going to matter in between after 20 minutes.
The high base కావాలంటే అలా యూస్ చేస్తాం. Doubts.
You're making it an interactive. Start in 1 minute. Start with the it's okay, like these events are common.
Okay.
Just showcasing that in the.
Okay.
Know that you are going to come.
So my call.
No. Extra. Which?
No,
Okay.
am I audible?
Yeah, with the voice.
Yeah. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank and also welcome you all for joining this Hackfest at ISB. So to introduce myself, I'm Roni. I'm the CTO of Entersoft. So I've been working here for almost like past 10 years. So I have gained some knowledge over the past few years where I want to share it with the startups and also for the companies who are trying to build up security best practices within their organization. So as this is a Hackfest, I thought it's kind of relevant for most of the startups to kind of understand the need for security and the gaps that they might have. And so I just created a small presentation to show some of those things in my mind. So to start off with the first one. Yeah, sorry for that. So I believe culture is the foremost and important piece of thing that organizations have to take care about. So when I say about culture, when you think about developers and also the testing teams, it's not like they should not behave like cop and thief. So it's always the agenda of the development team or be the testing team is always towards working towards the goal of the organization. So they should really collaborate with each other and see what sort of things that they could clear off the challenges that they had. So developers would always have these strict deadlines or timelines where they have to meet and fix those particular issues. On the other hand, you have the security teams who would be working towards identifying the vulnerabilities and trying to clear those vulnerabilities. But when you look at it from a developer's perspective, they have these challenges of not only developing something based on the business requirements, but also to kind of identify the solutions at that same time. So it's quite challenging for them to address those issues. So the security teams should keep that in mind, and they should provide the remediational steps or recommendations back to the development teams and make sure they have implemented all the security controls to safeguard the applications. So the coordination and also encouraging the team members to identify more number of issues, and also encouraging the development teams to kind of implement the best practices by providing them trainings and encouragement required. So these things are clearly evident in DevSecOps. So if any organization wants to have that culture within their organization, what they could do is simply they could integrate the security solutions into their existing DevOps pipeline, and also have that culture. Like I said, it's very important because you have a lot of solutions in place that deals a lot of security aspects, right? You have firewall solutions, you have security controls, you have endpoint protections. There are a lot of things that you can put in place, but the human intervention or the employees who are taking care of these activities, if they don't understand these aspects, there is a chaos. There is a chaos running in your organization. So you need to make sure that the security is tightly, integrated into the existing DevOps and start off pretty early in the life cycle. So when you kind of address these challenges from the early stages of the life cycle, you'll have a pretty mature product at the end. But if you are not following these practices, eventually organizations could suffer with financial losses or let's say reputational risk. So culture is very important from my perspective. Organizations have to make sure that they have a strong culture and teams who understand and work according to the organization goals. So I get to hear a lot of times from the customers that we deal with, and they always tend to focus or rely on dynamic testing for the most part, is because they think that that's the quickest way of identifying vulnerabilities rather than going for a static analysis. So for those of you who don't understand these terminologies, static analysis is pure code level analysis that we typically carry out on the source code. But whereas the dynamic testing is the testing which is conducted on a application which is deployed on the production, right? So for the most part of the security testing, these dynamic testings are conducted on a stage or demo environments. But there could be cases where we can also do these testing on the production instances as well. So, organizations have to really think about the approach that they want to put in place when they want to address these security challenges. So they can, on one hand, you have static analysis, which is a comprehensive method to identify the vulnerabilities. And on the other hand, you have the quickest way to identify the vulnerabilities. Let's say even this Hackfest, if you think about it. So we can identify the vulnerabilities in a day, right? So this could be, sensitive or, critical areas of the applications where we test. But still there are chances where we might miss out on cases where, we identify the issues only we dig into the source code and we do the code analysis. So I believe that, most of the organizations do believe that a hybrid approach is the best and most recommended way of identifying the vulnerabilities, because you have granular approach from the static analysis and also dynamic, being able to quickly identify any security gaps. So I would highly recommend that organizations follow these practices. And for the static analysis, as most of the clients are not in a position to share their source code with the security vendors, so at least they should have some people who take care of the static analysis, like who are good in coding and also understanding the security side of things. So that's very essential for the organizations to, conduct the static analysis. But for dynamic analysis, you can share it with your, security vendors to do the testing and quickly, get back with the results. Also, you could have your own teams doing that activity in-house. And so these are some of the application level security checks that I would recommend. It's not like these are the final things. And I believe that most of the things, that are put across on this slide, they kind of addressed the critical areas of your applications. So then that's why I have to start with the authentication, where for the most part, if you identify the recent applications, they are not going with username and password based authentications. So the industry has, identified that passwords are, they're susceptible to certain kind of attacks, and they want to come up with some best solutions where you can leverage these things to avoid, all the brute force attacks and also the rainbow attacks that are typically carried around the passwords, usernames and passwords. So for the passwordless authentication, you can use either OTP based authentication and also QR code based authentication. And for authorization, again, this is another critical area where most of the security experts, when they do the audits, they identify the loopholes in terms of the authorizations. So applications do have certain roles, and those roles will have certain privileges to access or to perform an operation within your applications. So putting a comprehensive authorization controls, role-based access controls, things like that, that could really improve the security of your applications. And most of the developers only concentrate on the authentication layer, but they tend to forget some of the controls that they have to put in place for authorization. So that's something that the development teams need to clearly focus on in order to avoid major hacks within your applications. And input validations. This is my favorite, and most of the security teams.
Sorry, can you expand a little bit on what is authorization?
So authorization is about your applications will have certain roles, and there are some privileges which are specifically mentioned to do a specific action or maybe accessing a particular resource. So if you have those authorization checks defined, so a user with the same privilege or maybe a user of a different privilege cannot access the resource on which he does not have the permission. So yeah, that's one of the most critical area where we identify vulnerabilities for most of our customers. And input validations, it is again tricky because sometimes we get to hear from the client stating that, we have performed the front-end validations and we don't want to do the back-end validations. So this mindset is quite dangerous, because if you're only doing the validations on the front end, and if you're not concentrating on your back-end security part, so hackers can use all sort of proxy tools and tamper the data and bypass the input side, front-end validations. So it's always essential to perform both front-end and also back-end validations, because you don't want to unnecessarily send each and every request to the server. So that's the reason why you have to do the front-end validation. And even if, let's say, hacker is able to bypass the input validations at the front end, you need to have some security controls at the back end to make sure you are comprehensively addressing all those security threats. And web APIs, like, most of the applications today, when they want to interact with the back end, it's always, there are some web APIs. And these could be RESTful web services. This could be SOAP based, or, gRPC, or you have GraphQL based APIs. So all these APIs again have their own set of standards. OS deals with these particular things, and they have exclusively mentioned all those checks that you need to follow for the APIs. And when dealing with APIs, it's not only about the security, but also about the APIs being functional every time. The performance is also very critical in this case. It's not only about the security, but your APIs needs to be exposed, and also they should be functional. And if your APIs are not functional, your client application will not have any value, right? So that's the reason why you have to address both security, and also at the same time, you need to make sure your APIs are available. And in terms of the code that you're working on, so developers don't usually build the code from scratch. So they'll use a lot of libraries, third-party frameworks, and things like that. So attacks not always, are a cause because of your source code, but it could be also because of the components or the frameworks, the libraries that you are using. So you need to make sure that, software, as part of software composition analysis, you are addressing those third-party risks as well. So these are my best picks in terms of, addressing the security threats at an application. So it's not only about the application, but it's also about the infrastructure, right? So attacks won't happen only on the application layer. So it's always a good practice to make sure that you are also understanding the underlying security risks that could happen, and also that's the root cause for many of the attacks. Because when we, as a hacker, when we try to see the security controls defined in the applications, when we don't find any loopholes there, we don't stop there, right? So as a hacker, we want to find as many entry points as possible. So these are some of the entry points that you need to, again, take care of, like your infrastructure, the application on where it is hosted, the server components or the network components or all the devices, they have to be hardened. And there are certain security standards which address those hardening part. So, you can avoid all the unnecessary ports or services. You can clear off any default credentials. All those things would be addressed in the hardening part. That is also called as configuration review. And, if you have any firewalls, or it could be a WAF firewall, which is an application layer firewall. So that's, again, configured to prevent some of the attacks that could happen on your application. So again, you need to make sure that your WAF solutions are secure. Your WAF is configured as per the industry's best practices. Because if you're simply deploying the WAF solution and all the security solutions and not thinking about the configurations, again, there are some gaps in which, the attackers could find out the entry points and bypass the security controls, or maybe even whatever security measures they have, they could still bypass and identify the loopholes in the backend application. And as more and more organizations are moving towards or migrating towards cloud, like be it Azure, GCP, or AWS, there are many native security solutions which they are providing, and also there are some marketplaces where you can buy some of the security solutions. So when you're dealing with cloud, don't assume that cloud is always secure, because as it is, a shared responsibility. They have to really think about what sort of security risks that could happen if I deploy my application on cloud, right? And also, due to several compliance and regulatory requirements, sometimes you cannot deploy applications on cloud, and that's where you have to rely on your on-premise infrastructure. So you need to think about balance between all those things. You need to make sure that your on-premises security measures are in place, and also your cloud security measures are in place. Unless you have someone who has that cloud expertise, you cannot simply identify these gaps. So it's better if you have your applications deployed on cloud. Make sure that you have someone in your team who understand the cloud side of security challenges, and then address those immediately, or else even if your applications are secure, there could be some misconfigurations through which an attacker could still get into your applications. And so these are the do's, I would say, like have a secure fallback mechanism. So by fallback mechanism, what I mean to say is you can have multiple layers of security controls. It's not single layer of defense. Let's take as an example, you are authenticating your users. In the olden days, right, you used to authenticate your users with username and password. That's the single, it could be a single point of failure. If your passwords are breached, right, there is nothing other than that which is restricting those attackers or the adversaries. So in that case, you will have kind of an OTP as a next layer of defense, right? And so there will be several security measures that you need to put in place in order to mitigate one particular attack. You don't want your sensitive data to be revealed to the public or the attackers, and also you want to keep everything private, right? You don't want to unnecessarily be susceptible to attacks and fall prey to this attacking techniques. So that's defense in depth, and also deny everything by default. This is one of the best practice that development teams could follow. Like let's say you're trying to in your code, you're trying to define a Boolean flag which says is admin. You have defined this variable to just make sure that if a role is particularly belongs to an admin, you want to make sure that those functions are available to admin. And if it's not an admin, you are trying to provide a different set of operations for the users, right? In that case, if you initialize your variables with the defaults which states is admin is true, right? In that case, what happens is when an attacker is trying to do any operations to kind of bypass the security controls, by default it becomes true, and admin level operations are now exposed to the attacker. So you need to set the defaults to false so that you're restricting even if there is a chance of an attack, right? And also do the audits periodically. It's very essential. You cannot do the audit on an yearly basis and expect that your applications are secure. So you need to make sure that you do audits at a regular intervals of time, where you do a lot of code changes, or let's say you have different configurations, and you are doing some migrations or any of these activities. You need to do some audits to identify those gaps as well. And log critical scenarios is again very important because during the attack scenarios, logs are something that a security guy would look into and identify the root cause or kind of track the attacker. So if you're not logging these sensitive operations, right? If there is invalid attempt made on a login, so that's a attack scenario, and developers should log these things and make sure they have some alerting mechanisms or notifications sent across to their administrative teams, so that they are aware of these attacks and also try to mitigate it to a level where that is business acceptable, right? So logging is also very critical, and then maintaining the backups. So if you are not maintaining the backups, so there could be chances of single point of failure where you have your entire data set residing in one particular location. And if an attacker has identified this data and he has now gained access to this data and has wiped out the entire data, so in that case, your application cannot return back what it meant to deliver to the end users. So it's again essential to have and maintain the backups, and also securing them and making sure who have access to these backups and things like that. So these are some of the do's that I would like to highlight. And coming to the don'ts. So for the most part, in the startups, most of their junior level developers would go and identify the resources on maybe on a video tutorial or maybe on Stack Overflow and identify some of the solutions. But all those solutions will not have the security implementations. They'll try to explain you those concepts for you to understand them and also do it by following all the security best practices. If you're simply relying on some video tutorials or Stack Overflow, there is a high chance that your application source code can contain some vulnerable code. So, and again, there are some of the assumptions which I have mentioned here, which are very critical, like they cannot expect, data cannot be tampered. There can be cases where your SSL certificates are compromised, or somehow there is a proxy attack happening. In that case, like I said, all the client-side validations are now stripped off, and now your backend validations are, highlighted. So if you're not thinking that these data cannot be tampered, or whatever request that is coming through is not, is not tampered, then you don't put the relevant security controls there. So it's very essential for the teams to understand this. There could be cases where there is an SSL attack that could happen, and data could be tampered. And then storing the user's passwords in the plain text in the password, like in the database, is again a security risk. So any sensitive credentials, especially like passwords, they cannot be expected to remain in the database as plain text. It's advised that they should use hashing techniques to hash the password and store the hash, and also sort to increase the randomness for the password, and all those other security controls that could be followed for the password to be secure. And don't store the passwords as is and in plain text in the database, because if there is a SQL injection that happens on your application, attackers could write some queries to extract the database where you have the plain text revealed for the end users or for the attacker. So again, the next thing I want to highlight is many of the times when I do the source code reviews, I find the API keys or database connection strings or encryption keys stored in the stored directly on the source code. So what if there is an internal attacker or your development team has a bad is a bad actor? In that case, they have access to the source code and they know the production level encryption keys, API keys, and things like that. When they walk out of the organization, you have to really think careful about these things, because these have to be dealt by the administrative teams, and it should not be generally accessed to the development teams. And also sometimes these keys and these DB connection strings and encryption keys are exposed to the public repositories. Like if you host your source code on the GitHub, then these things could be identified and they could be tested against your production instances. So make sure that your GitHub repositories are not public and they have to be kept private. So in terms of the internal and external audits, some organizations have the security teams in-house, and few organizations have both internal and also external auditors. So in which case, if you are an organization where you have only internal teams, internal security teams, and you don't rely on external audits, then your audits are subjective, because your deadlines, you have some subjective feelings towards your organization. So in that case, the internal audits could be subjective. It's not always, but it could be subjective. But on the other hand, if you are trying to delegate this to an external auditor, he will be objective in identifying the issues. So they would be reporting whatever they identify, and they try to show this to the stakeholders, and in which case they could identify the gaps, right? So when you share the results, you could compare your internal testing and also your external testing. So you should have a combination again here. For a comprehensive approach, you should have both internal and also external audits. And external audits is also required for compliance and regulatory requirements. So organizations have to keep that in mind. So these are some of the things to keep in mind when working with a security vendor. Most of the time, while we are dealing with the clients, we don't get to receive the documentations or the demos, right? So these are very essential, because they can understand their own applications, but not the security vendor, because you own your business, or you know what you have written code. But we as a security vendor, when we try to work with the clients, we don't get to see these documentations or demos at times, in which case there could be gaps in the issues that we identified. So it's very critical for the organizations to maintain documentations, keep it up to date, and also share any video recordings or demo recordings of their products, which could save a lot of time for both parties. And they should also define sensitive versus non-sensitive parameters, because as security auditors, when we are trying to identify a vulnerability, we try to look into the sensitive parameters and also non-sensitive parameters, because our focus would be mostly in terms of the sensitive values, like be it credit card details or be it personally identifiable information, right? Or any other, let's say for healthcare sector, you have patients' records. All those things, based on the industry and based on the business, they know these sensitive parameters. But sometimes there could be some parameters which are not known for the security auditors. So that's the reason why we should have a classification between sensitive and non-sensitive parameters, so that when we identify a vulnerability, we know what we are talking about, and we raise the severity based on the data that is returned. And the next one is the privilege or role matrix. Again, this is exclusively required for authorization checks. If you want to perform any authorization checks, we should have roles and privileges defined. So, they have to be explicit in stating about what sort of operations these roles could do. So that is again something which is very important for a security auditor. And then keeping a separate instance for the security audits is very important. Like, you don't want your production instance to be tested for the security audits. And also, when you have different environments set for different activities, the security auditing team could do a full throttle audit on that particular instance. So that is again very essential. And doing the code reviews on a controlled environment is something that the organizations have to keep in mind, because if you're doing this activity in-house, most probably you have a controlled environment. That's again dependent on the client or the organization who have the mature security practices. But if you're dealing with a security vendor, you cannot share the source code directly with them. So you need to make sure that this code is shared in a controlled environment, so that whenever they are dealing with critical areas, those code is not generally leaked out. And then assess this the vendor before onboarding. So this is very important. Like, if you're not assessing the security vendor, you don't understand their capabilities, and you need to dig through their profiles and understand where they stand before onboarding and delegating your security activities. So with that, I'll try to see if I have any questions from the attendees. And yeah, if you have any sort of questions based on the presentation, you can let me know, or else we could take up any challenges that you had. Yes. Yeah.
There's this Google Map kind of thing given in the link that have been shared with that platform. So I want to ask that, like, how an attacker can access things from the Google Map API link.
So you are asking about Google Maps APIs related security threats?
Yeah.
Okay. So usually when you're trying to integrate your applications to the Google, Google, you have to first of all register, and you'll have certain credentials which would be shared by Google, like API keys or application ID, some secrets, which they wish you to kind of manage it at your end in a confidential way. So for the most part, these whatever they mention, that when they say the secret needs to be it should not be leaked, or it should be maintained in your backend instances, you cannot reveal them in your client side codes, or else if you're passing on some requests, you need to make sure that these secrets are always secure, and that way you'll make sure that your API keys are not being sent by some or used by some other third parties. Because if they have identified or grabbed these details, they could make an API call to the backend Google infrastructure, and based on the requests that are coming through, based on the application ID and the keys, the billing would be charged against your account. So you need to make sure whatever they mention, that these things should be kept secure or confidential, or strictly not to be placed on the client side code. You need to put those controls in the backend application stack to make it secure.
So at most part, they were like financial attack kind of.
Yes.
Yeah. I was asking like about the mostly data hacking kind of thing. So was it like anything relevant with a misconfigured Google API data hacking or something?
So when you say about data, what's the data that you're worried about here?
Yeah, any like the important data about any say the user's admin's password or something like hacking some that thing from the Google API.
No.
Yeah.
That is not generally possible.
Or
Uh,
anything that is in the database, like residing in our databases.
Yeah, it is based on the data that you maintain in your database. For the most part, in terms of the Google Maps API keys and all, it's the secrets that are very critical. And for the most part, as the data is again made public, there won't be much attacks happening on that link.
Another question that I have is like mostly what we do is we have this thing called database, and then we have for the sake of like when the user is active in our platform or on our website, we maintain local storage something. So my question is what should I maintain the local storage, or should I like just fetch things from the like database? Which one is most secure, and then which one is like easy to use and in both the respects?
Yeah, like you have mentioned, yeah, definitely. There would
Or
be some cases.
cookies also like
Yeah, there would be some cases where you want to maintain your data at the client side for better performance, and you don't want to unnecessarily make the calls to the backend.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when we have to deal with especially the sensitive parameters, when you feel like that is very sensitive and it should not be disclosed on the client side, because at whatever you get to see on the browser side, right, there are nothing, you cannot set some security controls that prevents that user to view that content. So for the most part, you have to rely on the backend part to retrieve these things. Maybe kind of maintain an identifier that does the mapping in the backend that tells you like who the user is or what sort of records that you require. So try to avoid all those sensitive parameters on your local caching part. So whatever content that you could put where it doesn't have any sensitive things associated to it, yeah, you can definitely make use of it. But if it is anything which is sensitive, you should have a backend implementation, but not the front end.
okay, not in the local.
Yeah, not in the front end. But there could be some security measures you could follow, but still they could be bypassed.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would like to add something to Google actually. So there was an interesting attack. So what happened was, so actually consider using Swiggy. So Swiggy is an application which is using Google Maps for the directions part. But Google Maps is not just a directions service. So they provide a hybrid satellite and different images as well in directions and street with different kind of APIs. So in order to use Google Maps in my service, consider I'm Swiggy, so I have to go and purchase or subscribe for the Google Maps subscription. And also there are a lot of API restrictions on based on how many requests I'm going to make per second, per minute, per hour, and based on that my billing would be done. So what happened was, so I'm Swiggy, I bought Google Maps service and they provided me with an API. So using the API key from the application, I'll make a request to get some information of regarding the street view or directions. Okay. So what happened was, so if you are an attacker, you can install Swiggy, right, in your application, in your mobile, and you can intercept the traffic, and you can see the application is making an API call to the Google. So here you can see the API key. So here you can use the API key in your own application, and you can use the directions or street view data, and the billing would be done on behalf of myself. So I'm going to pay the bill.
It's like mostly the financial.
The financial.
Yeah.
So if I have, suppose if I'm restricted to perform like 1 lakh requests per day, then you will be doing that in a split second using a DOS tool or some Python script. You can do that.
Can it happen like for example, if I'm a attacker and like you are Swiggy like using so if some way like I'm having the API key and secret, so I can change the see the maybe the maps location, like say it's like not from your maps location is sending showing somewhere else, or the Uber driver is like showing somewhere else, the minutes are like that kind of change in data.
So here Google itself, it just provides the directions information, right? But to change the location or the destination, right? So it's entirely I'm handling it.
Yeah.
So I'm the Uber, I'm taking the information, what's the destination, and I'm passing that information over to Google for the directions information and all. But what happens was, if you want to change the destination or something kind of like that, you have to hack into Uber, not just Google, right?
Yeah, like I'm hacking Uber, but I'm hacking Uber on top of your API key. So is that the kind of sufficient thing, or I need to hack other thing as well? Like
Yeah, there are a lot of things actually. You have to hack into the user session as well.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
right. I have to hack into my session as well, such that you can change the destination. Yeah. And also to prevent from these kind of financial
Losses.
API requests getting followed. So what happens was we can actually use the source. We can actually filter the source from which the request is coming from. So if the request is coming from the Swiggy application, the particular IP or the domain, then it's fine. Otherwise, it would be blocked. So these kind of restrictions can be done on the Google.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I had one question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, you were just mentioning about storing IDs, let's say some cookie information or something like that to identify the user, maybe remember me or something like that. Isn't that possible that a man-in-the-middle attack can happen using the cookie information? I mean, using a secure cookie or maybe HTTP cookie only, but is there a better way to store, use a thin client, but a secure client? Because usually thin clients are secure, but what's the next applications next possible?
So can you repeat that question once again?
Yeah,
I assume it's Manish from Ajita, right?
Yes, yeah, this is Manish, yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm considering the use case of having a thin client. So I'm having least amount of data on the browser or any other mobile device, where I'm using a user cookie kind of a mechanism where we store secure encrypted data to identify whether the user is valid or not. However, a man-in-the-middle attack can happen. Like somebody can behave like he's the user and send requests to the server itself. I mean, I know a couple of ways to mitigate that issue, but I would like to know if there is something more than what I can do. Let's say a secure cookie, HTTP only cookie, something. Is there something more that I'm missing?
So Manish, when you're talking about sensitive details in the cookie, do you mean to say that it is unencrypted or something which is not set by the backend framework as
No,
the identifier?
no. So that is an identifier that is encrypted. So it's not raw text. However, it is a user ID. So it is encrypted. It is a secure only. It's a secure cookie, sorry. And it is an HTTP only cookie. It's not a JS cookie.
Yes.
Anything more that I can do?
So like Charan has just mentioned, right? You can always gather more insights on the request that is originated. Like
Okay.
you have the user session, you have the source IP,
Mhm.
right? You can gain some insights on the request side of parameters.
But
And if it is a public facing application, right? You cannot generally maintain these IP addresses because
yeah.
this is not your target environment, right? If
Yeah.
you're really sure about a particular client, then you can have the whitelisting mechanisms
Mhm.
to have a specific IP address as a source. But if it is more for the public, cookie-based identifiers are generally observed, and apart from that, there will be some web API calls, right? If you have the backend APIs, then instead of cookies, you can pass in some authorization headers, where you maintain these user-related details in the backend based on the authorization token or bearer token, right? Bearer token.
Yeah, bearer token, JWTs.
Yeah, JWT token. So if you have the APIs, it's high that there are cases where they maintain both the cookies and as well as the tokens. But if it is, if that is not something of a challenge, you can go with the API-based tokens and do the mapping there. Because these tokens are not susceptible to cross-site scripting attacks. There can be cases, but yeah, high chances are they avoid all the cross-site scripting attacks because
Got
header level details could not be fetched for using a XSS payload.
Got it. So actually, we're doing both JWTs and cookies. So would you recommend us to move to JWTs completely?
Yeah, definitely. It is based on the client that you're using and based on the scenarios. Sometimes there can be cases where you might have to still stick with the cookies. But for the most part, we see implementations with the token-based approach in the headers that avoids the cross-site scripting and token hijacking part.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? So you talk about, can I share?
Okay, so you talk about API header security. So I understand that on website, basically, we can identify where my source traffic is coming from, and I can provide access to my APIs or not. What about the mobile applications?
Yeah, mobile applications as well, because if you're dealing with a mobile application, targeting Android or iOS, you might be building these applications using the native technologies. For Java, you might be using either Java-based or Kotlin-based Android native app. And also for iOS, you have Swift or any other things. But I really want to understand if you are using any hybrid technologies for the mobile application, because in that case, you have the web browser, the JavaScript rendering at the client side, in which case you can, still be, able to retrieve these things from the cookies. But for the mobile applications, if it is a native app, definitely you can still rely on the API keys in the headers.
We have hybrid application right now.
Hybrid. So you have the web technologies in your mobile application. So yeah, definitely you could be using the cookies for that part.
I'm not sure about it, but should be.
Yeah.
I think we are using Flutter, and Flutter I think deploys to native code, if I'm not wrong.
Flutter?
Yeah.
Sorry, can you come up with that question again?
Yeah. So Flutter is a hybrid mobile development framework, whereas that does not use JS inherently. I think it deploys to native libraries to get a better performance.
Okay. So in that case, header implementation should definitely work there. If it is a Flutter-based mobile application.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely I can get back to you on that if we have certain references that we could share that could give you an idea about the solution.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Generally, we have recently seen in the last year, a gaming application called PUBG has been banned in India. So the government have mentioned due to some data breaches like VR-trans. So can you discuss some of the potential legal and regulatory compliances requirements that startups in India, like what should they actually check out when their application is out for?
Yeah. So I don't think I could give a better answer for this because I don't have that compliance and regulatory side of skill set. But for the companies who want to launch those applications where they deal with things like personally identifiable information or some sort of geographical based regional laws and restrictions, they have to have a mechanism like I've mentioned. They have to clearly define the sensitive parameters and non-sensitive parameters. And also when they have listed out all those sensitive parameters, they need to identify whether this breach of those particular sensitive parameters could, could be legally when they are, you know, kind of when a law comes into the picture, there could be cases that they have to scrutinize your company. So they have to understand before they launch certain applications, they have to really go through the legislation, see what sort of laws are existing in that particular regions, and then apply those compliance or regulatory requirements, or else, yeah, definitely there will be some penalties, or they have to close the company as well. Yeah, let me check if my team has any better answer on this, like before I kind of conclude on that.
Yeah, Ronnie. So I have something around that. Actually, I'm pursuing cybersecurity in MIT, in cybersecurity PG actually. So I've gone through in my entire career, I'm on the offensive side. But during this course, I'm able to see the defensive side, how enterprises are dealing with cybersecurity. I have a few things which I want to share regarding what you said. So your question seems like a small question, but there's a lot to it actually when it comes to regulation of the privacy laws. There are a lot of things that any organization, if they are having a system, a simple system in which they are processing, if they are collecting any information of any other individual or any other business. So here there are two things actually. If I have a business, then if I have some customers, the customer data which I'm handling is called the PII. And also, if I have a vendor, if I have other business details with me, that is called the business information. So there are two things actually, the business information and also the personally identifiable information. So both these two information, if I am processing, collecting, and doing some sort of business with these two kind of informations, then I have to legally abide by the not just the regulations. It should be privacy. It should be if I'm into a regulated industry like finance or healthcare, there are a lot of privacy policies and frameworks that I need to adhere, such that to gain trust of not just the customers and also to have a business continuity plan. Because if there is a hack that happens on the customer data, I have to intimate each and everyone all over the world, and not just my customers, but everyone, that I got hacked, and these kind of details are what the attacker got. And you have to take these security measures before the hackers use your data. And this kind of thing, this is just a small thing actually. There are a lot of things and controls that every organization should consider. When it comes to India, recently I've gone through a case study where the regulations and privacy rules in India are not widespread and sophisticated when compared to Europe's or US privacy laws. I think GDPR, if you can consider GDPR, it's a global standard, not just for the European nation, but it is a global standard, and it is considered as a gold standard for everyone who is dealing with who wants to provide privacy for their customers. If someone wants to, every organization should include security by design, and implementing each and every small thing, they have to consider what are the security implications that I might have. So I believe India should implement they should enforce a lot of hefty fines as well, I believe, because we don't see usually Indian companies paying a lot of fines, but they're actually taking a lot of information from the individuals. But thank you.
I have another question, kind of. Generally, hacking for a startup or for a companies, it won't be a regular thing. It's always comes out of the box and for a surprise. So you mentioned about in the first slide or the second slide, you mentioned about the culture. So, for example, if I'm a startup and 4 or 5 tech team are there, and suddenly some hacking has happened online, so what should be the measures? I mean, there are a lot of measures, but in terms of the emotions or the feelings, so how we should maintain, and what things that we have to take forward in the next couple of days or 3 days time?
Yeah, that's a tricky question. I would say. Yeah, I'm
You're big enough and important enough to get.
absolutely. Yeah, on the contrary, you might even close your business due to that hack. I don't know what sort of reputational loss or financial loss you might have to go through for that attack. But yeah, you need to pull up your socks. You need to identify the root causes. First, I would start off with the root cause where the gaps has happened. I need to understand if my team who are working fully understand the security aspects of the application. Provide trainings, necessary trainings, because when you're working with limited team size, you need to have a different skill set who are strong in and also be able to address or deliver that as soon as they can, because you are a team with a limited size, right? So you need to train them, understand the culture, and identify the gaps. Maybe have a lending hand, maybe with a security auditor who audits and provide you the details of the hack reasons. And then you need to make sure you don't have to repeat the mistakes that you have did in the past, right? So that's the reason why we, conduct these hack fest or train people. Say that, some of the slides have some bad practices or the things which have done by the previous clients. So when you share this knowledge and when you get to see these things, you can implement the better security controls at your application layer. So yeah, it's more about strategizing things and have a better plan to mitigate the risks.
Yeah, only I like to add a few more points.
Yeah.
Like only explained everything on it. What are the things to do after hack, but I'll just give some best practices in order to not get hacked. So thing is first, most of the hacks happen because most of the organizations doesn't know what are the assets which were public and issued today, and whether they are updated or not, what types of versions they are using. Most of the people don't. Okay? And developers often lacks finding part. Most of the hackers use some sort of social engineering techniques and phishing attacks to getting to their net. From there, they'll start, exploiting further. So some best practices, which it's not my best practices, but which I have learned from MIT itself, where they suggest for an individual company or a city or entire country. Okay, it applies for everything. First, we have to maintain the assets. Asset inventory is first thing, and we have to keep everything up to date. Someone has to patch when there is a latest update. The team has to patch it. The third thing is like, we have to maintain the backups. In case there is a hack happen, there has to be a backup. And the fourth thing is, the critical items. What are the critical items and important part of the organization? It has to be isolated. It has to be isolated within the infrastructure. And fourth thing is like, the fifth thing is like, we have to regularly train our teams, because they are in a regular job, right? They don't have security exposure, so we have to train teams, when sort of phishing awareness and conducting some sort of events to them to measure how secure they are keeping their computer. So in that way, we can protect our organization from not being hacked like 95%.
I have a question there. I think you said something about patches, right? This is something that we were just discussing over lunch also. Sometimes these patches that are introduced, okay, or they change something, you are required to change your code a lot. And these are not trivial changes. So I know you're focusing mostly on the security aspect. If I look at the software engineering aspect, every time I make a change to code, I should be going through a regression test. And the regression test is neither trivial nor cheap. So how do I know which patch I have to apply? Otherwise, it's a life and death matter. And which patches I can say I can defer it to a little later. I'm talking about the more practical aspects of managing the software application suite.
Yes. Yeah, do you want to?
Yeah. So, I mean, we usually suggest like, that is very good question, because whenever we try to fix something, it will trigger new vulnerabilities as well. So in those scenarios, what we suggest is like,
Not just in terms of security vulnerabilities.
Yes,
I mean, just the
overall,
code
yeah,
will break, because some version, something is not compatible. You made one change, you have to test everything.
yeah. So in those scenarios, like we'll apply the patch on the staging environment and we'll try it. Then only we'll apply it to the production. In the meantime, we'll apply some sort of workarounds. Whenever there is in terms of, updating the code, mostly we'll do regular software development life cycle is different. But, most people patch it immediately when there is a vulnerability, right? Regular cycles will go on. But, whatever the code changes, they will check it in the staging environment. Okay, that's what we suggest.
So apart from the stage environments, like if there is something which is very critically impacting your business, it could take number of hours in terms of the development activities or the changes that you need to make sure. You can have other security solutions like WAF, like we were talking about WAF. So if there is a patch that is available and that is acting as a hindrance, because when you patch it, you have to do a lot of backend changes. So you could deploy a WAF solution and mitigate that particular threat in the WAF, configure your WAF in such a case that your backend vulnerabilities can still exist. You could do the workarounds like you mentioned on the stage environments. And then once it is fixed, you can maybe relax and see how it's going. Yeah. So it's not only about the questions on this presentation, maybe at an organization level, you are facing any sort of security challenges. We are happy to take, if not, we cannot answer, we can definitely get back to you on an email, finding out a solution, because these things are really challenging for us. And it's also, something which encourages us to go and do a lot of research. Yeah.
Is there any website like say test our platform in that website, or and have a little bit of confidence that, oh yeah, my website is a little bit of secure.
Okay, you're talking about free websites that could do the security checks.
You're paid, but just to give us a confidence, like.
Yeah, definitely there are certain tools, but I don't have that on my presentation list. I request my team to share it with you. So there are a couple of websites that does some basic checks on your website. Let's say in terms of the SSL configurations, open ports or services. You could do some free scans yourself, or you can use some open source tools to identify if there are any gaps. And there are again commercial tools as well. But yeah, definitely, like you said, there are some open source, tools and also platforms available. And some of the clients would also, show interest in giving out this to the, bug bounty platforms. They encourage bug bounty programs so that anyone who is doing the security research outside could do those activities and, take up your website and identify if there are any risks. And they usually expect some rewards or bounty as part of it. That is something you need to pay only if they identify security risks.
Okay.
Yeah, you can also approach those bug bounty programs as well.
So on that mail, can you write that as well?
Sure, definitely. I'll request my team to share across those details. Thank you. Okay. With that, I conclude this session. Thank you all.
Thank you so much for your participation, guys. It was a good number of questions, and thank you for that. So this actually shows that people are having real concerns about security and they are worried about things. One more thing that we also wanted to know, I mean, people here and people who are attending us virtually, we wanted to know if there are any challenges or any real-time hacks that they have seen throughout their careers or throughout, with the organization that they are working now. We just wanted to hear any story that you can share with us about any real-time hacks or any hack that you predicted that would happen or worried about. So if there are any scenarios like that, I think this stage would be very good to share them and we can discuss a lot. I'm not talking anything only specific to application security, but it can be any kind of hack.
So this is
So
like,
people who are, yeah,
so I'm just sharing a scenario. It's not something like a hack, but what happens mostly is most of our customers are students only. So mostly they try to access our site using their Wi-Fi connections or something. So when they try to log in, they yeah, using their college Wi-Fi or something. So they find an issue like login unsuccessful or something. But when they try to log in with their mobile data, then it gets logged in. So this is kind of a scenario like we are facing.
College Wi-Fi are banning whatever say we are using MongoDB. So MongoDB is banned by most of the college Wi-Fi's. So that's again one issue coming whenever people are not able to access to a platform. It's not about a platform, it's about the third party things which are using into a product and they are being banned. So this is one thing which we face, not at the security at least, but
And it's not the case about all the Wi-Fi's. Like I have, logged in with this Wi-Fi currently, so I haven't faced any issue. But yeah, sometime like some other Wi-Fi, I might find the same issue, like even with the same laptop or with the same configurations.
I think even if it is not a security concern, if my team would like to answer.
Yeah, I think it depends on maybe the internet service provider. Actually, because even if you can see, there are a lot of so there are billions of websites, right?
Yeah.
So we cannot actually categorize them. We cannot ask a human to categorize them. So there are some algorithms based on the content on the website, the website will be categorized. So if your website is getting categorized into something, some ISPs might block that. And also in some colleges, so they have these routers, and also they'll get these whitelist and blacklist some other third parties. So if your website is categorized into some of that, it might get blacklist. So you have to check what is the category of your website.
Okay.
I know why you have asked this question. You're still pursuing your triple IT. So, understand what is the intention behind that. But guys, just to put an end note to whatever happened here. Ronnie, excellent job on presenting a granular level and comprehensive details, not only from an security perspective, from the developer's point of view. It's like, see, for us, the philosophy is not the CTOs or the CXOs that are going to fix the bugs. It's the developers at the end of the day who are going to fix the bugs. So the entire presentation right now has been targeted towards that, and the event is specifically designed to, make sure that organizations from a startup level, they evolve from, in order to increase their cybersecurity posture from application security point of view. As an organization, we have dealt with more than 450 plus customers. I'm just bringing the business angle to you such that you can understand the gravity of what we are doing as an organization with the collective minds of almost 40, 50 people in this organization. In this entire, 10 years of journey, and this is my 14th year in cybersecurity. Maybe someone who is more experienced than me can give a different opinion, but whatever the experience I have, cybersecurity is not a one-stop solution that you'll find by buying a tool or, implementing an appliance or kind of buying solutions that are already readily available. Cybersecurity is more of like a journey. When we started this organization, it's purely, in the nascent stage. The country is taking the baby steps towards cybersecurity. Nobody is bothered about India is most likely a reactive country rather than proactive country. So if you go to someone, I'm not undermining the capabilities of the security the country has, but the lethargic response towards the need of the hour. So nobody, consider that cybersecurity as an investment. They consider cybersecurity as a cost. They always feel like, okay, let the hack happen, we'll call back to you. So majority of the developed countries, they feel that security is a proactive approach, not a reactive approach. That's why they always have this defenses place and the compliances in place. Recently, our government also has passed the data security law that if someone breaches the information, you are getting charged somewhere around $500 million. It is not going to happen like this. Nobody will pay $500 million until you have a scrutinizing process. So Europe, I'll just take some history notes here. When the World War II happened, Hitler did this job of taking the voter IDs and important information because they are so structured. And based on that, he identified who is a Jew and who is not a non-Jew. And that's how he categorically identified people and placed them in chambers. Now the information is so structured. That's why European Union has brought this law called GDPR. So which is a baseline. If anybody wants to remove the personal identifiable information, they will just fine you and close your company in a span of minutes. So I hope India will evolve to that level. To just put a perspective to the previous question, which address that aspect. Now coming back to the session, I want to add, it's not only that application security we focus, we request all of you to join hands with us as in this journey and present your challenges, not only that, you see on a day-to-day basis, but what your organization is going through from high level, from stakeholders to the last person that is joined recently in your organization. What are the challenges from process to implementation? Such that as a company, we also evolve and we also take that as an education. And also we'll try to come back with you with a different and out of box solutions. And that will help us both travel in the same direction and we can see some tangibility at the end of the day. Yeah. Hope this session is wonderful. And I thank Hari, Roni, Veer, Hussein, Joss, Charan, and from our these are our tech teams. Sorry to miss that. And from our marketing teams, Murali, Akriti, and Pratim. And from ISB, I thank Anmisha, Sai, and
Samir, Saikat.
Samir, Saikat, and the team who supported us providing this ecosystem and help us to conduct this event in a successful way. And hope every year we join hands to this event and bring more people and more center of excellence and think tanks to start ISB as a starting point or an inception to create a cybersecurity awareness across India and coming age startups. Thank you, guys.
Can we have a big round of applause?
Guys, the last thing, a survey has been shared with all of you. This is just a short survey to understand how do you address your cybersecurity needs. This would get us more information on like how do we help organizations like you as well. So please fill in the survey and help us with your answers. And I see there were no challenges at all, no hacks happened. I see a lot of lucky people and lucky entrepreneurs here. So hope this continues as safe. So thank you so much. And we also have something to share with you, like a webcam covers. So please. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, guys, who have joined on YouTube or watching us. Stay tuned to iVenture at ISP handles for more updates on this space. Thank you so much for joining. We are ending the live session on YouTube.